The product is the influence now. In the luxury space, I think increasingly we're seeing the death of hype. Marketers can't really pull the wool over someone's eyes anymore. The gatekeepers are gone. Every artist in any medium has access to every cultural consumer in the world.
Right.
Culture is not transactional. But at Maxwell, I think the way I define our product is that it's a luxury product and it's IRL human connection. An LLM doesn't actually know what it's writing about. It's just next token. The human is coming up with the idea in the first place. Every new medium starts with slop and ends with opera.
Hello and welcome back to the Responsible Luxury Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Petrovic, founder of Laurenti. For decades, a small group of editors, magazines, and cultural institutions shaped what the world paid attention to. Today, the gatekeepers are gone. But what happens to culture when the gatekeepers disappear? Consumers have direct access to information, creators have direct access to audiences, and luxury brands are being forced to rethink how they build trust, relevance, and influence. To help us make sense of this shift, I'm joined by Jacob Brown, creative director of Maxwell Social and former creative leader at Vogue, The New York Times, Style Magazine, and Condé Nast. In this conversation, we discuss the death of gatekeepers, why the era of hype may be ending, the future of creativity in the age of AI, and why human connection may become luxury's most valuable asset. So please enjoy my very special conversation with my dear friend, Jacob Brown.
Hi, I'm Jacob Brown, and welcome to the Responsible Luxury Podcast.
Good morning, Jacob. It's such an honor, and I'm so grateful to be with you. I am really excited to have you on the podcast. Where our worlds collide between media and fashion and luxury and jewelry is quite fascinating. And I found from the moment I've met you and Wendy introduced us, I found you to be just such very few people I'll say this about, but there's a creative brilliance that very few people have. And it's, not to put you on the spot, but there's I think that it's rare to have both the creative capacity, but then also the business acumen to blend and bring inside of an organization. But before I jump into let's take a step back. And you've had such an impressive career background, starting at Times. You've worked at Condé Nast. You've done some incredible projects with Vogue, your own independent consulting company as well. So take us back to the beginning. How did you get started in media, and what got you where you are now?
Yeah, so my first magazine job was actually, I started a magazine at Cornell while I was a physics major, and I changed to economics, but then with my friends Katie Lederman and Donald Montenegro Johnson. Donald's now a partner at Loring Augustine Gallery in New York, so he's also big in the art world. But we started a magazine at Cornell.
Wow. And
I don't know. I'd gone to college for STEM, and I just at some point was like, actually, I want to be around. I guess I would say culture, but really at the time I was like, I just want to be around cool people who are interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess that's culture, but it was a little bit more just instinctual at the time. So we did the magazine in college, and then I came to New York, and there's this thing called the Columbia Publishing Course, formerly the Radcliffe Publishing Course. It's sort of I don't know how relevant it is today, but at the time it was sort of like the gatekeeper for getting publishing jobs. It was really like a networking thing. So I came, and it was very low key, but it would be like every day it would be like a editor from a different magazine or a different book publishing house, and they would come give a little lecture, and then you'd have drinks with them afterwards. And it wasn't like
make connections.
Yeah, it was very much a networking kind of little thing. And then I was briefly an assistant at Esquire. I was a terrible assistant. That didn't last long. And then I got hired at Paper Magazine, and I was there for 4 years, and I was at V Magazine. So I did kind of the indie small publishing thing.
Yeah.
I eventually became the editor-in-chief of V-Man, which is the men's magazine of V, working with Stephen Gann. And then Sally Singer hired me as her features director when she became the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Style magazine. And I think around that time, while I was at V, I had my first consulting client. I did a lot of work with Ben Gorham when he was starting Byredo, the fragrance the Swedish fragrance company,
right, sure.
Which is, of course, huge now, but at the time was very small. And I was helping him name some of a bunch of the fragrances actually. And I don't know if he still does this, but at the time he had included sort of like little poems, like little bits of writing in kind of to express, I guess, how he felt about each fragrance. I would kind of interview him and get his kind of personal take on things, and then kind of construct a little narrative, kind of not really a poem, but a bit poetic in the language. So then I went to the New York Times, was there for 30-something issues, and then Sally went back to Vogue and basically started Vogue.com. And so I worked for her there for about 12 years in various capacities, and did a lot more brand consulting at that point, did a lot of video work. Sort of towards the end of my time there, I got really involved in the branded content for Vogue. At the time, that was really editorially directed. Like, again, Sally Singer was basically doing all of the branded content along with being the creative director of Vogue.com, and she needed help with that. And then when she left, I kind of just took over that. And through reorg, I was basically working on Vogue, GQ, and all the other kind of fashion titles and fashion advertising clients. So that was, I think people like Marc Jacobs or Swarovski or Cartier, but also like Adidas and eBay,
Right.
Who wanted to kind of do something narrative or culturally driven that wasn't advertising to connect with the Condé Nast audience. And then I went in-house at Theory for a little while, and now I'm the creative director of a private club in Tribeca called Maxwell, and I have a consulting company called Guest Editor that I'm doing with Susan Kappa, who was the former head of luxury at Condé Nast.
The Maxwell opportunity, finding yourself in that position, was also pretty serendipitous. I remember you telling me a few months ago how you met the one of the founders.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I should talk about this, but I'm just going to anyway because it's interesting. But a friend of mine who is the publicist of Neue House last summer had asked me, like, she needed a moderator for a panel that they were doing, and like I guess their moderator dropped out, and she like kind of last minute asked if I could do it as a favor. I did, and it went really well. And so she's like, we've been wanting to start a podcast here at Neue House.
Yeah.
Would you want to like do that for us? And I was like, yeah, of course. And I got really into it. And we were sort of out to dinner, like signing the deal, and she gets a call, and it's like, oh, we're locking the door. Neue House is gone. I mean, I guess it's sort of back now. But then I was like, I wonder if I could find another private club that wants to kind of engage culturally as a way to help define who they are, and also communicate to the wider world. Like a private club is weird because it's quite closed off and small and inaccessible.
Right.
But for various reasons, you want people to know what you stand for.
Right.
And it was appealing to me because I realized that, I love making magazines, but the business model is very, there aren't really like the kind of magazines now like there were when I was in my 20s. So I'm doing a magazine called Cafe Society for Maxwell.
Which we'll get into.
I can tell you more about that later, but essentially what's interesting from the business model point of view is that, there's a lot less advertising pressure on the magazine, or even chasing kind of algorithm
ads
stuff,
or even
or algorithm for like, I don't need to do a Kardashian story to get clicks, because the purpose is just like, if we can create a really beautiful, interesting, editorial independent magazine that it reflects the values of Maxwell, but it's not really an advertising product, that accomplishes what Maxwell wants, and it's also very creatively interesting to me.
So that's a good place I want to dig in a bit deeper, is looking at the wider culture of Maxwell. Is you take the communication strategy of the magazine launch is one thing, but you look at culture today, and you've had experience with more boutique independent brands, bigger, more institutional brand names. If I ask you a question, who controls culture today? And is it the consumers of the piece of the media that you're creating? Is it the creative director?
Well, I think I'll get to an answer, but I think the thing, kind of defining what's changed is helpful. I think, which is, maybe like 15 years ago and earlier, pre-social media, pre kind of democratization of information, you had sort of a monoculture. Most people accessed culture through media.
Right.
There was really, that was all there was. There was, mass magazines, radio, TV. There was independent media, but it was still pretty like limited. Like, it was still like a print magazine that you either subscribed to and got in the mail or went to the newsstand and bought. And just to give that a little bit more color, the first things my earliest writing was about bands, about music. I was mostly interested in the way they looked and what they were wearing, but that's what I wrote about.
Yeah.
If you wanted to know about a new band, the only way you would know about that is either it got played on the radio, which is like, top 40, or you read about it in a magazine. There's no really was no discovering things online.
Right.
Right. So when, as a writer or someone in kind of, let's say, in a broader sense, cultural curation, I would go hear the music in a Sony studio in Midtown, and no one else in the whole world had heard it at that point, or maybe 15 people had. That was a very different model. So you had, the kids would call it gatekept, or gatekeepers. But I think what it also meant is there were all these subcultures and niche cultures, and they were all trying to get attention, and they all were really isolated because there was no way to access them unless a gatekeeper promoted them, and then occasionally one would get picked up and
through the
take
various
off,
channels
yeah,
of writing
and the rest
pieces.
would die out. And so you would have a lot of very, if you imagine kind of a botanical metaphor here, you'd have a lot of very stunted, tons of little stunted plants that were desperate for light, and then a few of them would get really tall.
Yeah.
Now everything has access. Every artist in any medium has access to every cultural consumer in the world immediately. So no one is really hurting for an audience, but also no one's getting that kind of supercharge that they would have gotten from a gatekeeper in the days of gatekeeping.
And it almost seems now there's so much opportunity for artists and people to get discovered easier, but it boils down to, how can you decipher between mass attention and true influence? I think culture is such a fragile, very challenging thing to build, and the easiest thing to knock down with mistrust with your consumers, your clients, your audience. So you look at where we are today with media, and it's if we wanted to start, let's say we wanted to start a band or something tomorrow, and, we can access anyone we want all over the world. How do you balance between the mass attention and then influence as an emerging artist or a brand in culture today?
Well, again, let's kind of use the historical comparison. I think the idea of influence used to, really what that meant was someone was influential because they controlled the flow of information.
Right.
That's what that used to mean.
Right.
You were a journalist, or you were the booker at a venue, or you were a gallerist, and you could just promote put an artist on, and everyone would go to your gallery, or any other kind of these positions of power where essentially there was a pretty large imbalance in information. So curators, journalists, gatekeepers, they had all of the information, and the culture consuming public only had what they were shown. Now that power doesn't really exist, so that the curator, the journalist, the venue booker, whoever it is, they don't really know anything more than their audience, who they're selling to. Mm-hmm. So I think that influence is maybe an outdated term, to be honest.
What would you say? What's redefining today? Influence and intention is something different. The way that you earn it is different. How would you redefine influence today?
I don't think there's any switches or levers to be pulled. I don't think that's how it works. I think the two things are, the product is the influence now. In the luxury space, I think increasingly I mean, we're seeing the death of hype, an increasingly ineffective ploy to kind of use high follower count personalities to drive
Sales
of expensive things.
Right.
I think that at the end of the day, that kind of it ends up all canceling out, and that's what's happening now. Is everyone's, it was interesting to see whoever wearing
Whatever bag or shoe.
Yeah, whatever bag or shoe or sort of slightly accessible element of a luxury house's offering. But now that doesn't really work as much anymore. And, you see LVMH pulling back and shedding assets. And I think that most people sort of agree that the consumer is always going to, at the end of the day, come back to the product. Marketers can't really pull the wool over someone's eyes anymore. It's just not, and particularly in the fashion space where it really 20 years ago, it used to be about the image that got projected was everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now it's the piece of clothing is everything, and it's the fabric, and it's these things that you can communicate around them effectively, and you can make sure people know about them, but you can't really
force there's a level of trust, I feel like, that consumers today are becoming more evolved to be responsive to. And it's like, how do you build trust with the modern emerging, the newer age consumer today? One thing that's very clear and obvious right now is the rise of founder-led brands. And you look at more institutionalized household luxury brands. So why do you think founder-led brands feel more culturally relevant than bigger household name brands?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just be honest, I hate founder-led brands.
Why is that?
I mean, I don't like telling consulting clients who are founder-led that they have to get on TikTok every day, even though they do, to be effective.
Right.
I guess the reason I hate it is because, and I don't mean that I hate small brands led by their founder. I mean, I hate this idea that
the brand is dependent on the face
of a kind of oversharing founder
with
who's on social media all the time.
Right.
Although it's very effective and it works. Like, don't get me wrong. I think what I don't like about it is two things. One, it means that it's a strategy that only works for some founders. Like, not everyone can do that. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm not sure that if we're talking about a company that makes jewelry, like, I'm not sure that every brilliant jewelry designer is going to be someone who can, like, go online and, like, a lot of great creatives are not so good at speaking to the public.
Right.
The other thing I don't like about it is I think it puts pressure. Well, that then you have the founder has to have something interesting to say every single day. I think it's borrowed from a non-luxury space. I think it's borrowed from brands that are making widgets that you actually, it's like it's more technical and it's more like, oh, it's less poetic when you're making a soda or a t-shirt or an app or I don't know, some tech thing or whatever. Then it's like, yeah, there's plenty of weird technical stuff to talk about every day. But I think if you're making velvet slippers in Italy and you just have one really great product, basically, like, sure, you could talk about it every day. It's almost like it's like another one of these things, like the kind of hype thing where I think it's a shortcut, and I don't know if it's appropriate. It's appropriate, but I hate this. I think a lot of people feel like that is the only way to go, and I just don't think it is.
That's a really good insight, and I think that's important to recognize too. It's like a self-awareness piece of knowing your industry, knowing your product, and knowing your client. You have to know if you're in the luxury space and you're talking front-facing, it almost loses a sense of novelty and specialty. You want to focus on the craftsmanship, and you said before, you want to focus on the product and the quality of the product. And from my experience, I've been testing out different content models too, and the highest success type of content is the behind the scenes of the jewelers and the craftsmen working on the pieces behind the scenes. That stuff is interesting, I think. I think that also people are tired today of...
When you say that's the most successful, what do you mean?
The highest engagement posts.
And does that lead to a long-term customer, or is just the highest engagement?
Highest engagement in terms of, I look at that as top of funnel, and then I get interested. And then they look through maybe the Instagram page or go on the website and then make an inquiry.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I look at it too. I think it's important to be kind of somewhat skeptical of the kind of like funnel paradigm with luxury, particularly because I don't know that every luxury customer behaves that way.
Yeah.
The funnel paradigm, I think, works really well for non-luxury goods. I mean, if you're selling Burger King, that everyone can buy Burger King, every single person in the country. So if you can get as many eyeballs on Burger King, some percentage of them will then eventually go buy a Whopper, right?
Yeah.
But I think and this is, I think, what the hype thing with luxury, the kind of rabbit hole that luxury houses fell down is that it's like, yeah, you can like get a celebrity or whatever it is and get that super high engagement content.
But is it
not all those
actually-
customers that's not necessarily appealing to your final customer all the
Right.
time. Like, what percentage of the final customer saw that? I think that's like a really important metric because, I mean, I'm thinking about this a lot with Maxwell right now, is that like we can certainly do things that get a huge top of funnel. First of all, do those people live in Tribeca?
Yeah.
Do those people really, do they have the, financial situation to join a private members club? Is that the funnel model works? But I think it's important to constantly question it also.
You've seen culture, again, from different angles inside major institutions, taking your lessons from New York Times, Condé Nast, Black Book Theory, Vogue, and now Maxwell. And its creativity now, I feel, is such an asset in today's market, and I think creativity is also takes a certain leader to be able to bring that into an organization. There's an execution component there as well. So what does Maxwell understand about culture that most brands and institutions don't? Because I remember you invited me to Maxwell a few months back, and you walk in and there's just there's such a special energy to it. And you mentioned, I want to touch on this too, but it's almost creating this modern salon, this intellectual environment for interesting people to come together.
Yeah. Well, I think at Maxwell, I mean, it's just what I experience when I'm hanging out there. I think there's something about the design and the space, and it's a very kind of maximalist, like velvet and curtains and hand painted wallpaper murals. But I'm not sure I could exactly break it down scientifically, but something about the way it's set up is just really lends itself to conversation. Like I always feel like I'm at more like a dinner party at someone's really amazing house. Like it has that kind of like,
it does.
You just sit down and start talking either to a friend or a stranger. I mean, oftentimes for me, it's someone I don't know that well because I'm usually maybe there a couple nights a week and I'm talking to members who maybe I've talked to once or twice before, but you end up having like a 2-hour long conversation. So I think the way, like I was mentioning this before, but at Maxwell, I think the way I define our product is that it's a luxury product, and it's IRL human connection.
Yeah.
So it's a space like a physical space where your phone, I mean, you don't have to put it down, but most people, you're not looking at your phone there. And it's luxurious. It's really high end food or drink, depending on what the night is. But all of that is kind of crafted and curated together in a way to facilitate conversation. And so something that we're increasingly focusing in on is, we know that our members enjoy that, and we're trying to curate a lot more, whether it's sort of very small, like very member driven, like there's now a classic literature book club, there's nonfiction and political debate dinners.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know, it reminds me a little bit of like being in college and like going to dinner and you like debate about politics. I mean, I feel like people are scared to kind of, in most environments today, people are really scared to speak their point of view or speak their mind on things unless they know everyone's going to agree with them in the first place.
Yeah. The intellectual friction can be really good for evolving conversations and perspectives.
Yeah, I think it's unusual to have kind of a luxury I mean, at the end of the day, Maxwell's it's luxury hospitality, but I think it's unusual to find oneself in a space like that, and also find oneself in a space where you can kind of, in a friendly, collegial way, be a bit heterodox and like spout off and have someone think you're wrong, but it's okay, and have that kind of really free-flowing intellectual stimulus and environment.
Yeah.
And I mean, in fact, so Maxwell's named after Elsa Maxwell, who is sort of helped coin the term cafe society, but the magazine is called Cafe Society, and it's really based on that idea of free-flowing ideas. So, you know, think about the cafe society era in Europe, and you've got, I don't know, you know, just wildly different intellectual currents crossing paths in these cafes in Vienna and Paris, Berlin, what have you, and sort of for better or worse, it would like just germinated a million movements and a million great and terrible things, and I think it's fascinating. So that is our product, and there's a lot of ways to communicate that.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to communicate it is actually just to make the product really good, and then the communication sort of is quite easy.
Yeah.
I think usually when a brand or someone I'm working with or myself is banging our heads against the wall trying to figure out communication, it's because the product isn't right. And you know, a lot of times that's just where you are. Like sometimes that's just the reality of business.
When you say the product isn't right, meaning you have a good grasp on your community, your client, but you're saying the product doesn't fit your target.
Well, it's just product market fit. So like actually if the product's not right, you also don't have a grasp on your market, right? Like maybe you have sales.
Yeah.
But I think particularly now there's so much change occurring. So, you know, like in the fashion space, there's a lot of usually fashion brands have a lot of tension in between retaining legacy customers, which might be a huge amount of revenue, but that is on a downward trajectory, and then acquiring new customers. But what if what it takes to acquire the new customers turns off the old customers? So there's a tension there, right? Like, you know, like, and that's something probably like the C-suite is often wrestling with, which is, you know, we know that our customer base is shrinking, but it's still a huge amount of revenue, and we know this is our new customer, and it's growing, but it's a tiny amount of revenue. If we push down the gas pedal for that new customer, if we do it the wrong way, we lose our old customers, and then we're just out of business.
Right. Do you think about a creative director, and people who aren't, you know, working in the space or haven't worked with a tastemaker or creative director may not know exactly what it is. So from a very basic standpoint, what is the role of a creative director today and the responsibilities they have inside of a company?
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm so argumentative and difficult, but I hate the term. There's so many things I hate. I don't like the term creative director.
Okay.
I just think it.
Why?
I don't know what it means. I think it's kind of bullshit. It's like suddenly fashion designers started calling themselves creative directors. Bros in Brooklyn call themselves creative directors. I guess I'm the creative director of Maxwell, but what is that? I don't.
What does that mean?
I think of myself as a writer. I've always thought of myself that way. In the magazine world, you know, you're a writer, you're an editor, you're at some point when you kind of get close to editor-in-chief, then the art department of the magazine answers to you. So maybe you're commissioning a profile on a actor and you want a portrait, and so you work with the art department. And then at some point you're doing fashion shoots, and it's based on your ideas about what's going on. In fact, you've just been to the shows, and so you come up with the idea. And so in the magazine world, you know, the great editors also work the creative director of the magazine, essentially, but that wasn't their title. Their title was editor-in-chief, whatever. Yeah. I think that, I don't know. I think, what does a creative director do? I guess it's just what it says. You're kind of, it's not an art director. An art director has real skills in terms of, you know, they've probably studied graphic design, and they can tell a 10-point font from an 11-point font, and they'd probably call it a typeface, not a font or something. they have like real technical skills. I think some creative directors have that, but I don't really think that's what's useful. I think it's, for me, what I think I'm good at, maybe I'll answer it that way, is kind of being the editor-in-chief of whatever I'm working on. So it's like, what is the cultural element? What is the visual element? How do we want to word this? What does this mean? I think I always talk about
An
how
architect in a way.
Yeah, I mean,
You've
I've
been
used
called
that
brand architect.
Well, yeah, I don't know
many
if anyone's
times.
ever called me that. I think that's what I have on my LinkedIn, which is whatever. I think like something about when you write an article, when you write something, it doesn't be an article, it's anything. You have a blank piece of paper in front of you and you start putting the words together. Mm-hmm. A lot of times in your head, and everyone knows this, in your head you think you kind of have understand what you're. I don't know if whether it's a pitch or a story or an email to your boss or whatever. When you start writing, in your head it like all makes sense, and then you put the words down and you realize it made no sense at all.
Yeah,
that's what's hard. It's right. The thing that's hard about writing isn't the craft of like stylish word assembly, which that is important, but that's not what's hard about it. What's hard about writing is actually figuring out what you want to say and have it be logical. Like you kind of, a lot of times you have a vibe, but then when you actually put the words together, you realize the logic doesn't all connect. There's huge leaps and gaps and white spaces. And so I think that kind of I think a writerly approach to anything, whether it's visuals or social media strategies, really what that is like filling in the logical like steps.
Mm-hmm. Do you practice writing every morning? That doesn't intentionally is not supposed to go out, but just to help you
like
refine.
The writer's way or the artist's way.
The artist's way, the morning pages. Have you
I've dabbled.
Practice that?
Yeah, I've dabbled in that.
I started that a couple months ago. As a writer, what do you find helps you, one, find inspiration to write well and write interesting things, and also two, help refine your writing capabilities? I
mean, if we're just talking about pure writing, the best way to refine your writing capabilities is to read, for sure.
Taking in as much as inspiration.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like being a ChatGPT. Like you need to train yourself on good material.
Yeah,
and you kind of absorb the rhythms and the way constructions happen. I think like if you're a talented writer, like a great writer, then you've kind of really internalized sort of the art of putting. I mean, it's not just assembling words. That's the thing, is it's an idea, and the idea has to be really great. And that then, if the idea is really great, or the story is really great, or the plot point is really great, or just like you're really sticking the knife in your boss in that email, or whatever it is you're writing, like it's got to be really, good. The good writing only happens when the idea is great, and then you know how to structure a sentence or an analogy or whatever to kind of elevate that. It's kind of an aside, but like a lot of times when people reckon, like when they're like, oh, this is like AI writing, a lot of what it is though is that AI is, I think the term is over-indexing, I'm not sure, but it's basically looking at the greatest writers in the world and the way they construct a sentence, right? Mm-hmm. And the best sentence might be, I don't know, like let's say someone's writing about the brilliance of Barack Obama, okay? And the best sentence about the brilliance of Barack Obama, and then you're writing an email, a cover letter to apply for a job about how good you are at, Excel spreadsheets, and it takes that sentence about Barack Obama and that style of writing, and so it's taking all of these flourishes and constructions and ways of making comparisons, and it just puts it on every single stupid piece of sentence and that's at its core why an LLM doesn't actually know what it's writing about, right? It's just, it has no awareness.
That makes sense though, because you have these different streams of really incredible writing pieces, and it's almost you're taking and you're aggregating all these different sources of information, but making a twist and making it your own. It's never copying something, because you're using inspiration from this one quote from a book that you really admire, but you're using it towards your writing. It's still creating something new because it's applying towards something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a similarity like between the way a human writer's brain works and an LLM, in that they've read and absorbed all this great writing, they have their own style and their own preferences, but they've absorbed all these structures and ways of constructing sentences. And so in that sense, there's something LLM like in next token prediction model like about the act of writing where it is sort of a human brain can remix all these past things. The biggest difference is that an LLM doesn't actually know what the content is.
Right.
Like it's just next token, whereas a human
Has a level of discernment.
The human is coming up with the idea in the first place. So it's, I've had this argument with tech people, so probably some of them are going to disagree with me. But I think I'm a pretty solid backing with that, or solid ground with that.
Yeah.
But, it's annoying because it's like for a while there was that whole M dash thing, which is like, every magazine writer uses M dashes all the time.
I love M dashes.
And that's why LLMs took it up, started using them, because they're trained on all this M dash writing. But then they put it into every sentence that like doesn't need it. It's easy.
Yeah.
Like it looks at this is a great thing. It looks at a magazine, New Yorker article or something, and it uses M dashes and it's a great sentence. But then you write a simple sentence and it changes it to an M dash construction when it's better without it. But it doesn't know the difference. So it just knows that great sentences have M dashes. The reason you use an M dash is it's a way to kind of like make it easier to
break a thought in a
two
sentence.
Thoughts to exist at one time or a contradiction. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons to do it, but it's better to have a 5-word sentence and be done. That's the best sentence.
Simplicity is brilliant.
So it's.
Today. I want to get back into the creativity, and I think that creativity is often treated like a soft skill in business. I think again going back to the role of you don't like this word, but creative director in a way, and you're dealing with perhaps the business side of the company. Why do you think creativity is misunderstood in business today?
I think a lot of business, like non-creatives in the business world, are looking for a lever to pull, or a button to push. They want they want a linear kind of you're planning your next quarter or whatever, and it's very like, well, we just increase sales of this category by 10%, and we'll be great. That'll make our quarter great. And if you're used to dealing with things like supply chain and cutting costs is a very like linear way of thinking. Like, okay, so that means we have to fire 10 people or whatever. You know what I mean? But if you're looking to grow products market share or something, particularly in a kind of hard to quite grasp world of fashion, luxury, arts, whatever, then you need to sort of make it appealing. And like, it's not linear. So I think it's, that creates a, that's a tension in the world of art and commerce.
That's an interesting point too, because it's, real, I think, to move culture, like move the needle of culture, even move influence of a brand today. I think that you do need that raw creativity to be able to get attention, because there's so much people doing the same of everything, people copying the latest trends and doing things that necessarily don't fit their brand or their company. And I think that, there's a quote, it's like never copy, only create. And I think that, copying leads you to be, I was speaking to a jeweler, name is Martin Katz, and he's like, you really want to find what you're good at and really create, because otherwise you'll turn into a commodity in any industry that you're in.
Yeah.
So I think that is I think that's like so powerful, because I feel like you know how to do that so well. It's like creativity is like, I think it's the rawest form of creation, obviously, but it's something that technology can never take away, is the human creativity. Jacob, what do you think taste itself has become a competitive advantage? Finding a deep level of curation, deep level of discernment, of looking at Maxwell today, knowing how to curate a room or curate the members or even curate this new magazine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of two minds of it. I mean, my general knee jerk to the questions like that is just to be like, I think taste is bullshit. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, if I'm tasked with hiring people to like help with something, it's like sometimes the taste level just isn't there, and there's like no other way to, like, I think it's both like not that like impressive to have good taste. It's like maybe you need it, and it's essential, and you either have it or you don't. I also just think people like pat themselves on the back about it way too much. It's kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
Let's get into Cafe Society. You just launched the magazine, was it 2 months ago?
A month ago.
A month ago. So what is the vision behind Cafe Society?
The historical Cafe Society was sort of basically late 1900s, early 20th century. And, you had artists, politicians, kind of revolutionaries, academics. The coffee house was like a gathering point.
Right.
That was Cafe Society, and then it kind of evolved a bit into be more socialite, and that's where Elsa Maxwell kind of got involved, namesake of Maxwell. But the thing I like about that era is that it was socializing was very intellectual.
Mm-hmm. So debate is almost like a mating ritual.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I'm being
almost
a
like
bit facetious, but it was like that was it was a way to relate to other humans, was to like sit down and play devil's advocate and challenge ideas, be challenged. Just tech people like to talk about, if you have an idea, like really advocating for it, like you're in a meeting about your product launch and maybe Cupertino or something, and if you have an idea, just advocate for it fully. Don't like soft pedal.
Right.
But then if someone else's idea is better and they also advocate strongly, then you just completely surrender, and you know what I mean. Don't try to form consensus by everyone soft pedaling. Everyone fully advocate their idea.
Yeah.
And then when you recognize that someone else is better, then you just you let go of your idea.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're trying to better the ecosystem and the culture itself, whether that's a company or an idea. So don't take it personally.
Yeah, I mean, they do this in the security culture of, like, in the, I don't know which departments, but in Israel, they always have a designated, I think, devil's advocate, basically. So, like, no matter what, one person has to disagree. But anyway, I just like, I enjoy debate and argument and disagreeing with people. I like to hang out with people who have like a really different views than I do in all directions. But I think a lot of people don't enjoy that today, or are scared of that today. I think
it's such a flaw in our society.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is all wrapped up in the politics of the day, but the people are really worried. There's a lot of heavy consequence for misspeaking, basically, and so intellectual freedom is. I'm not talking about like sort of censorship and the things that people talk about campuses and stuff. I'm just talking about like with your friends or like out. Right. I think people are a little more guarded, unless they're around people they know they agree with. They
want to feel that social acceptance. And I think that if you say something that may be triggering or say something that might be a bit polarizing, it's almost like you have to be courageous to say something.
Yeah, or it's just not polite anymore. There's less room for that sort of like kook at the dinner party who like offends everyone, but everyone's still like there's a lot of that kind of there's a lot of homogeneity.
You're bringing back what was such a successful model back in the early 19th century and 20th century. And I think I'm excited for that, because I think that we're also at a point of, you can disagree with me, but a renaissance in a way right now, whereas like models are changing, businesses are changing. I think people are evolving and waking up in so many different ways. And it's like the more we can get interesting people and interesting discussions together, I think the further along we can push together as a society.
I mean, I feel like I don't know if I can co-sign that
no, that's
that level of grandeur. I think that
Why?
I'm not necessarily like I don't know that I necessarily care whether what Maxwell stands for or what Cafe Society stands for is representative of a national renaissance. Mm-hmm. What I do know is that at the scale of a private social club, there's a huge appetite for what Maxwell offers, and I do know that at the scale of a independently published magazine, which is the scale of Cafe Society, there's a huge appetite to read that. And so, I mean, The other thing with the magazine that I should say is, that's the inspiration, is the Cafe Society era. Sort of the editorial lens is, I cover everything in the magazine pretty much, but I want it to be kind of fodder for the best dinner party or cocktail conversation you've ever had. So there's always a point of view or an opinion. Like, we don't just write about cultural happenings. That has to be the writer or the subject has to have a take on something in society.
Yeah. It's not just reporting, you're saying. In other words, it's not just reporting. It's like
it's very op-ed.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that's more pointed. Sometimes that is sort of verging into politics. Sometimes it's much more personal. The cover, we had a cover. The cover story was about Joachim Trier, who just won the Academy Award for his film Sentimental Value with Stellan Skarsgård.
Okay.
And Maya Singer wrote the cover story, and she had, just has like a really personal relationship to Joachim Trier's full oeuvre films. And so she touches on sort of why they resonate in society right now, but it's also like really just her personal opinion on what his films mean.
Right.
And I think you could probably read her article and not have seen his films, but be at a cocktail party and kind of score a point by borrowing what she had to say. She just talks a lot about how watching cinema is connected to memory, and the films of Joachim Trier are all about memory, particularly Sentimental Value.
Yeah.
Sentimental Value takes place kind of in this family home over a few generations. So, I had a writer rewatch all of Mad Men, and I did that because I knew it. Mad Men just went on HBO for the first time, so it's in 4K. You can rewatch all of it.
Yeah.
And so I was like excited to watch it. It just so happened like pretty much the entire world had the same idea at the same time. John Hamm rewatched it. So when that came out, everyone was like, how did you know? And I didn't really know. It was just kind of instinct. But why re-binge a show? I love the idea of like, and we'll do this in every issue, but like rewatching one of the classic prestige. First of all, prestige television as a category is brand new, right? It's only 15 years or so.
Yeah.
So going back and rewatching prestige TV is like a new idea. It's kind of like watching old art house cinema over, like from like watching new wave films. Like it's that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But TV is typically so connected to critique of what's happening in society. It's really interesting. Like rewatching Mad Men, you can be like, oh, holy shit, like I love Betty Draper now, and I hated her the first time around.
Yeah.
Or like now I have a totally different take on why Joan decided to sleep with a Jaguar dealer. Or, there's just all of these things where the color on it's the same. Knowing the ending, living in a different world than when the show came out, you can really just completely have a new perspective on it. And so that's a fascinating thing. It's fascinating to have a writer's perspective on that. And I love the idea that someone reads that and then maybe watches it and maybe borrows some of the ideas and goes to a cocktail party or dinner and gets into an argument with someone about Mad Men and can maybe get into a little like intellectual jostle with someone.
Yeah.
So I've been in a very, I have an old friend named Gigi Burris who's a milliner, and she, like if you've ever seen a hat on the cover of Vogue, she probably made it. I mean, her hats are incredible, and everyone should check it out. But my Susan Kappa, who's my business partner with that, we were talking to Gigi about how we might be able to help her, and she was kind of talking about how, like basically talking about market share in the hat world, and like I had this insight, which I was, it's like, Gigi, if you can increase your share of the hat market some percent, that's great, but that's a tiny market, and so a small increase in a small market.
How big is the hat market today?
I don't know the numbers, but I mean, who do you see wearing a hat?
Not one. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, really, what if you could just increase the market size a little bit? Like not necessarily for yourself, but if you could actually grow, you're competing against people who don't wear hats. You're not competing against other milliners.
Right.
So we came up with this kind of man on the street, social TikTok, Instagram Reel series where she has kind of a talent who like just goes out on the street and tells people basically they look great except for because you don't have a hat, you look terrible. Like she basically negs people. Like she's like,
for not wearing
you're almost there,
yeah.
but your look kind of sucks, but I can fix it for you. I mean, it's much more polite than that, but that's kind of the gist of it. And she was, a little unsure about it, but decided to go with it. And it's been a huge success
I'll
for
link
her.
the
I mean,
series.
like 300% increases in engagement level stats. And her talent is starting to get like she's released a video where it was like the random person she stopped. She said the thing about, started talking about hats, and they were like, "Oh, you're that. We know you. We've seen your videos before." So suddenly she like that realization that like,
How to
I mean, this
create
kind of goes
desire
back
and
to
a
that
need.
top of funnel thing. We were talking
Yeah.
about where it's not always like just for her to just do content that's going to increase her top of funnel isn't necessarily the most effective thing. But if she can do top of funnel content that grows the size of the New York woman who wants to wear a hat every day. Like
Yeah.
if like a few more people start wanting to wear hats every day, that can have a huge impact on her business.
It's a trickle
It
effect.
makes a
also.
cultural impact. I mean, people are starting to recognize on like people on the street who get stopped now kind of sometimes know what's coming because they've seen these videos that have gone viral. But it also, so that's cultural, but also it changes the shape of the marketplace for her.
And something that I want to pull practically for founders listening today is for founders who want to shape culture intentionally, what's a piece of advice that you would give them? Just like one of your clients with that millionaire
Yeah, I mean, I
business.
think, Gigi's an artist, so I didn't have to over explain, but I think for non-artist founders, the first thing I try to impress is that culture is not transactional. So it's really, you've got to kind of go into it wanting to actually just make something cultural with the kind of goodwill and kind of like self-assurance that it'll come back to you. The second you try to like lock it down and make it contractual, and then it's like kind of takes the air out of the tire, so to speak. I mean, it kind of
takes
deflates
the fun
it.
and the joy out of
Yeah,
it.
the second it's transactional, then it just sort of stops working.
Yeah. So I want us to talk a bit about culture at the end of the day today and where you see it going. And I want to tie it also back into the philosophy of responsible luxury. And from a high level, I think about, people ask me, it's like, what does responsible luxury mean? And I tell them, responsible luxury today, I think humans' tastes are evolving, people's desires are evolving. I think two of the largest pillars is trust and human connection. And I think those two pillars are very important for building culture inside of a home, inside of an organization, inside of a brand. Where would you like to see us living in 5 or 10 years from now as like a cultural legacy?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think there's a few things there. Like I think the luxury business is generally by nature somewhat responsible. I think that it's easy to like be like try to. I mean, if we're talking about real luxury, like it's a very small scale. It tends to be focused on like cashmere or linen that's like very carefully farmed. There's no industrial scale anything. I think it's the accessible luxury that tends to be really problematic in terms of ethics or what have you. The scaling of luxury creates issues because then you're trying to get margin where it doesn't exist. But if you're a small time leather crafter or sweater weaver, then luxury should be small scale. So the second it's an issue for ethics, I think you're probably not really luxury. In terms of where culture is going, I think we don't know that. I think that there's never any the clock never gets turned back. So we don't know where AI is leading. I interviewed a futurist recently named Daniel Keller, who used to be a fine artist, and now he's in VCAI, and he like made this point to me that every new medium starts with slop. When the movie camera was invented, they just sat the camera in front of a play and filmed it.
Yes.
We don't know if AI just leads to slop forever, or if some new genre is going to come out of it that we're, like, do we get to this? Like, I think the way Daniel said it was that it starts with slop and ends with opera.
I think it's a beautiful way of looking at it.
And we don't know. So will AI start with slop and lead to opera? We don't know. In a broader sense with culture, like the gatekeepers are gone. Everyone thought that things like Substack and podcasting would kind of like step in, but actually creators who have no guidance and no editorial, like no editors telling them what to do, end up just making boring, same crap again. So we really haven't solved any. We don't know what replaces gatekeeping yet. In general, all of this stuff figures itself out. Like, people were really worried when the printing press happened because no one memorized long poems anymore. You know what I mean? Like, so when Daniel was saying slop, and then you start with slop and end up at opera, that is historically true, and it's impossible in the moment to see where it's going.
Yeah, it's such a universal principle that people can take away from today's episode. And, I just wanted to thank you, Jacob, so much for joining me this morning. And we must plan another episode because we did not have enough time to cover everything
I'd love
today.
to. Yeah.
And for viewers and listeners today, are they able to access Cafe Society?
Yeah, cafesocietymag.com.
Amazing. Okay.
You can subscribe and get the next issue in the mail.
And where's the best place for people to find and connect with you after the show today?
I guess LinkedIn would be best. You can search me on LinkedIn, yeah.
Brilliant.
Or Instagram, I guess.
Amazing.
LinkedIn. Let's keep it business.
LinkedIn. Very good. Jacob, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation with Jacob Brown. One idea that stayed with me throughout this discussion is that culture cannot be manufactured through attention alone. It is built through trust, creativity, meaningful products, and genuine human connection. As luxury, media, and technology continue to evolve, perhaps the most valuable skill isn't simply reaching more people, but building and creating spaces, experiences, and ideas that people genuinely want to be a part of. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who is interested in the future of culture, creativity, and luxury. You can learn more about Jacob's work through Maxwell Social and Cafe Society magazine. And as always, you can find Responsible Luxury wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and check us out on Instagram. Until next time, I'm Lauren Petrovic, and thank you for listening.